then some syntaxes and primitives, operations, and expressions. Today, we are going to learn about how to output PHP, process code, and then about control statements, arrays, functions, patterns, and form handling. So if you remember, I told you guys yesterday that these are the 4 important areas to learn any language. So we have learned mostly about language syntaxes yesterday. We will see a few more today, and also at the end we will see form handling. And then next Monday, we will see file handling and also database integration. So if you guys have any question, feel free to comment in the chat box. Okay, so there are ways. What we have seen yesterday is one form of outputting PHP process code, which we have used echo function. Now, more to that, we also have print function. We can use print function to send the data to the output. And it also supports the PrintF function that we have in C. I hope most of you guys have used printf in C, and C++ as well. So the first argument that printf takes is a string with ampersand format codes. So a format code begins with percentile followed by a field width and a type specifier. We'll see a few examples of that shortly. Common type specifiers are S for string, F for double, and D for integer. Field width is nothing but it's a single integer to specify minimum number of characters to display the value, or 2 integers separated by period to indicate decimal values for double values. So this is just an example of how we can use printf. So printf is a function which we can call, and then we are saying x equals to percentile 5d. So I'm saying minimum values to be print is 5. So if you have values less than 5, it's going to add spaces at the beginning. And then we have percentile s, and then we're using \n to just give a new line. $x could be something 1 2 3 4 5, and then $size is just nothing. We will just quickly see some of the examples that we can write for printf. So if you see, I have echo. Echo can print single lines or strings or integers. But if you want to print an array, or if you want to format the output, then you will have to go for printf function. There is another function called print_r, which will output arrays and objects. So if you see the code, I have 2 variables, number 1 and number 2, and I have a character which is 50, which will be nothing but it's an ASCII character for number 2. Just a moment. Okay, sorry for the interruption. I had to take that important call. Okay, so if you look the file which I'm sharing, I have 2 variables, number 1 and number 2, which are integer variables, and then I have character, which is if I have assigned an ASCII character 50, which is nothing but number 2. So if you see, I am using echo function to print just single lines, or just integers or characters. But if you see, if I have to format the output, I'm using printf function. So there are different outputs, formatting of the output that I'm doing here. This is going to just print binary number. So I have number 1 as integer. It will convert that to binary and then print the output. And then here the ASCII character, which is 50, it is going to convert that and then print the number. And then I'm using some signed decimal, and then, so it is going to provide the sign for this decimal number 1 and number 2, like plus, and then the number, and then the minus number, like that. And then this is going to give floating point number. Remember, we discussed yesterday about double values of floating point numbers. It will have a period and then the exponent or the number after that. So this is for both with local settings and then without local settings. And then this specifier, which is going to give positive or negative value. And then the slide that we have seen, there was an example x equals to percentile 5D is whatever, percentile S. So x, I have 2, 3, 4, 5, and then size, which is going to be string. I'm saying it's a 5-digit number. So when we output this, it's going to say x is equals to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is a 5-digit number. Let's execute this, and then we will see how it's going to output. So I'm just using, as we have seen yesterday also, that there are two ways to execute PHP scripts. One is using browser, and another one is using command line. So here we will just point to that file. So when we execute it, we will see that number one, whatever, the first three outputs are nothing but I'm using it to output using echo function. If you say number one with whatever I have assigned values, it's going to print as is. Number two with negative, and then character 50, which is going to be number 2. So if you see the first one, I have used the printf function to convert the number 1 into binary code. So if you see, the percentile B is with binary code. And then we have percentile C, which we have assigned the ASCII character, is now converted to a number, and it is showing 2. If you see D, it's going to print as is what is the number 1 value with its sign. It's a signed decimal. And then percentile D for number 2, it's going to be with minus, that is a negative integer. And then if you see floating point number, I have used percentile F for a local settings aware, and then percentile capital F, it's going to be without local setting aware. And then we have percentile plus D, which is going to output the sign also of that integer or digit. So if you see it again, here the only difference between this and this is if you want signed output, then you should use so if you use percentile, it's going to print 1 percentile in the output that we have seen, and plus D is what is going to give you sign of that digit or integer. So this was, we have used a plus percentile plus D, which is going to give the sign as well, like whether it's a positive or negative number. And then if you see the last output, we have the printf function that we have used in the slide also. X equals to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is a 5-digit number. So we can use percentile D for integers, and we can use percentile S for string, and percentile F for double values or floating point values. Now let's move on to the next slide. Any questions? Feel free to comment in the chat box. Now, next is the relational operators. Mostly we have seen in the end of the yesterday's session about the operators, like what kind of assignment operators, incrementing, decrementing operators, and comparison operators we have. It's going to be same. We're just doing a recap here. We have greater than, less than, less than equals to, greater than equals to, and then not equals to. It also has an identity operator that we have seen yesterday. When we're using identity operator, it's going to check the type as well of the data that we are comparing. So the regular comparisons will force conversions of values as needed. As I told you, PHP is implicit typecasting. You don't have to define the type of the variable. It's going to convert it automatically implicitly. So comparing a string with a number other than with identity operator, it's going to result in string conversion if we need a string. Otherwise, if we are expecting a number, it's going to automatically convert it to a number. If two strings are compared other than identity operator, because remember our identity operator, it's going to check for the type of variable values. If we need number, if we need string, it's going to be converting both to be strings. So we have seen yesterday strcmp, string comparison function. If this identity operator or equals to operator, it's going to create any issue, then we can simply go for a string comparison. Strcmp function we can use, which is going to return 0 if both the strings are same. It's going to return a negative number if the first one is lesser than the second parameter, and then it's going to return greater than 0 if first one is greater than if first string has more characters than string 2. Now, moving on to the next slide, we have Boolean operators as well. And I think few of these we have already covered in previous examples in yesterday. So PHP supports and, or, and not, as we have learned in C, C++, and Java. The operators and or are also supported. And XOR is also supported. So if you see the example that I have, I'm giving x equals to 100, $y equals to 50. When we use XOR, either of these should be true. If both are true, it's going to go into the else condition, or it just skips this. If both are false, then also it just skips it. Either x should be 100 or y should be 80, then it will print hello world. Let's quickly check this. Okay, I don't think I have this in example, but we can just quickly create a file and then. So if you see, I just copy pasted the same code here. We have a variable x and y, and then we are checking whether print hello world either when x is equals to 100 or y is equals to 80. So let's see the output. Okay, so this is an error that we have seen here that it has printed. It says parse error, syntax error, unexpected $y. Just checking on, just hold on for a minute. It could be possible that copy paste has created some issue. Okay. If you see, so when we copy paste, so the problem with the copy paste that I did from slide to this was this double quotes. Okay, it got converted to some special character and PHP was not recognizing it. So you may face this kind of issues when we are just copy pasting from some other tools or some other sites code. So we have to be careful that especially special characters are not converted to some other codes. So if you see the output of this, what I'm doing, I have two variables, X and Y. I'm checking, I'm using XOR operator here, which will return true either any of this condition returns true. If X equals to 100 or Y equals to 80, then print hello world. So if you see the output, it has printed hello world because X value is Y we have defined as 50. So that's the reason it returns true and then it printed hello world. Now next we have a selection statements, like most of us have learned this right from C, and then we have learned in C++ as well as in Java. And then you might have also seen that in JavaScript as well as in Perl and CGI that we had sessions previously. So now, if statement is going to be exactly same except else if condition. So in Perl, you might have seen that it's just ELS. There's no E. Okay, ELS IF. If you guys are aware of shell scripting or bash scripts, there it's going to be just elif, ELIF. But in PHP, it supports else if. So you have to write ELSEIF. Remember, it's else if. Okay. And then switch statement is also exactly going to be same, wherein we have switch and then some expression, and then it just move the cursor to the case. It's going to check all the cases, and wherever case match, it's going to execute the code defined in that block. So first we have a single expression n. So here, if you see the example switch n, this is mostly, it's going to be a variable that is evaluated once. Once it is true, then the value of this expression is then compared with the values of each cases in the structure. It will execute the block of code once there is a match with the case label, and then it just executes the code and then moves the cursor on. or we usually use break just to make sure that the code is not going to automatically move to the next case. If there statement, then there will be a default case where if there is no match to any of the cases, it's going to execute the code defined in default block. We'll see an example. So I have a simple example, how the PHP switch statement format. We have a switch, and then in the slide we have seen n. So n is nothing but, as we said, it's going to be mostly a variable. So here we have a variable called favorite color, and then I have value red. So what in this case we're going to do is first it's going to check whether favorite color is defined or not. If yes, then it's going to get into the block of this, and then it's going to match the value of that variable with the cases defined. So what we have a case for red value, and then it's going to print your favorite color is red. In case of blue, it's going to print your favorite color is blue. In case of green, it's going to print your favorite color is green. And as we have seen in the slide, if there is no match to that variable value, use hello world beautiful day. Now it has printed just one string separated by spaces. Now the next array that we had, the string that we had was the same. I mean, hello world, it's a beautiful day. And then we have used explode function saying PHP that, okay, explode this string wherever we have space and then create array values. You remember we didn't provide any array key. So if you see here in the example output, it has used numerically indexed array keys. Now, before moving on to the next slide, in one of the slides, we had an example for date functions. Let's just look at that. So let me just first share the code. If you see in this example, I'm just using print, function as well as date function. Date function is built in PHP, and then there are a lot of formats that we can use to print that. So if you want to print complete day, and then like Tuesday, TUESDAY, and then if you want to print complete month name, and then what is the date, and then year, then we can just go for something like this. L is going to print complete day name, and then F is going to give a complete month name, and then J is going to give you J is going to give you the day of month without leading zeros. So it's going to be from 1 to 30 first. And then S, capital S is for English ordinal suffix. If you have first, then 1 and then ST, so that we can call it first like that. It works very well with J format. And then we have capital Y, which is going to print 4 digits year. So when we execute this, this is what we're going to get. Tuesday, February 21st, 2017. There are a lot of time to date and date to time conversions, built-in functions in PHP. If you want to get the epoch time, the Unix timestamp, then we can just go for time function. We can just call time function, and then it's going to print the epoch time. And you can use that string and then convert that time using date function. Feel free to post your queries in the chat box if you have any. Okay, so we have seen just implode and explode functions. We will see more array functions in next slides. This is just a logical structure of arrays in PHP. It's going to be key value based, a key based access function, and it will have key value and a pointer to the next value. So if you see, this is a hash function which is having key value and a pointer to the next value. So if there is no next value, then it's going to just return empty or null. So the next slide talks about how we can sequentially access array elements. As we have seen in the previous structure, PHP maintains a marker in each array called the current pointer. Several functions in PHP manipulate the current pointer. You can add an element, your pointer is going to change. When you remove an element, your pointer is going to change. The pointer starts at the first element when the array is created. The next function moves the pointer to the next element and returns the value there. Each function moves the pointer to the next element and returns the key value pair at the previous position. So the key and value can be accessed using the keys key and value on the key value pair. We will see an example on that. So both the functions is going to return false if there are no more elements available in the array. So previous function we can use to it just moves the pointer back towards the beginning of the array, and reset it's going to just it's just point to the beginning of an array and reset the array. Now we can we can consider as a stack as well. There are two functions that PHP built-in supports. PHP supports these two functions. If you want to add an element in the array, you can use array push. If you want to remove an element from the array, you can use array pop. So when you add something, it's going to append to that array, meaning it's going to add that value or key value at the end in that array. If you want to remove, when you use array pop function, it's going to remove the last element of that array. We'll see an example of that. if you see is to add an element into the array or to append an element into the array, we can use array push, and then we can use array pop if you want to remove an element. So when we use array push, it's going to append this value. So I have defined an array with values red and green, and then I'm calling this array push function to append to this array with values blue and yellow. So printr function I've used is to print arrays. Okay, it is used to print arrays and objects. So when I print this array, it's gonna give me red, green, and then it's gonna append blue and yellow. And also see that I have not defined any keys, so it's gonna be numerically indexed keys. So when we execute this, as we have, I'm trying to get an element, a value from the array with indexed with key as 2. Okay, so when we execute this, when I printed $A of 2 in square brackets, it printed blue. Now let's see array pop, how we can remove an element from an array. So either array or to remove, a pop function, I'll use it to remove the last element in that array. So when I call that array pop and then pass that array, it's going to remove the last element. So if you see the example, we have an array with values at red, green, and blue. When I call array pop, and it's going to remove the last element or last value, which is blue, and then it's going to just print red and green. So let's see the output. If you guys remember, we have another function to remove an element from an array that is called unset. When we started with arrays, we learned that, right? So let's see how it works. So we've used array pop, it removed the last element. Then I'm using unset function and then passing the key for that array, which I want to delete that and then print it again. So if we see, this is going to print red and green, whereas the last printer, because we have removed the first element as well, we have asked PHP to remove first key with 1 also to be removed from the array. Now array is left with just value red. Now let's execute and then see that. And then I have used unset function by passing array key 1, which had value green. Now that has also been removed from the array, and now array left with just value red. Okay, slide. So iterating through an array. The for each statement has two forms for iterating through an array. For each, array as scalar variable. So when you use scalar variable or a variable, it's going to give value in that array. If you want to access keys as well, then you can use a key value in for each. So like I gave an example, like I want to have an array with subject wise students list. I can use key as PHP and Perl, and then I can have students, corresponding students in those streams or subjects. So if I want to print something like PHP in first column, and then in next column I want to print all the student names, and in next row I want to print subject name Perl and then all the students, then I can go for the second for each statement. For each array as key and value, so that I can access key, PHP and Perl, and then value as student names. If you want to get just the student names, you don't care about the subject, you can just go for each array as scalar variable. So the first version assigns each value in the array to the scalar variable in turn, but the second value gives key as well as value. So if you see the example, we have an array called lows and then array Monday with the value as 23. I mean the temperature, lowest temperature it is talking about. And then Tuesday it was 18, Wednesday it was 27. So I'm using for each function here, for each, and then I'm using that array which I have defined as key and value. So if I have used key and value, then I can easily print what was the key. Key is nothing but here day, and then temperature is the value. So we can use the low temperature on. It's going to loop it. Monday was 23, Tuesday was 18, Wednesday was 27. Like that, it's going to print. Example for your reference. If you see, so you should have in braces and then gives correct indentation and all. So this is going to print 3 times the low temperature on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and then respective temperature. Let's execute this and then see what it prints. Now let's move on to the next slide. How to sort out student names. Now you want to sort this, you want to sort it by keys or sort it by values and then print it. So PHP has sort function. It's going to sort the values. Remember, it's going to sort the values in an array and makes a numerically subscripted array from the sorted list. So when you use sort function, it is going to sort the values in the array, and then it's going to remove the existing keys for those arrays, and then it's going to create a new numerically indexed keys. So if I have an array with, let's say, key as PHP and then value as student A, B, C. So when and then another, let's say I have PHP and student A and then Perl student B. When I sort it, it's going to remove PHP and Perl keys, and it's going to sort the array with either student A and student B, and then those will be assigned a new key 0 and 1, which is going to be numerically indexed keys for that array. If you want to sort an array, but if you want to retain the key value pair, like if you want to sort student A and B, but if I want also to retain which subject that they are into, then I can use a sort function. We can use ksort function if we want to sort it by keys, and then sometimes we also need to reverse the reverse sort as well. So we can go for r sort, ar sort, and kr sort respectively. So we have an example called sorting.php which I have created. We can just see a few of the sort functions that PHP supports. Okay, with the name as original, and then we have Fred, value as 31, A1 with value as 27, and then we have this key value pairs for this array. What we can do is we're using a few of the functions that we have seen in this example. If you see here, it's going to print as is. It's not going to make any change in the array. It is going to print, okay, this is the original array. We've used for each function and then array as key value, so that we can see key as well as value. Now I am just assigning the same array to a new variable called new, and then sorting it. So when we sort it, what will happen? It's going to sort it by values, and then it will remove keys, and then it will assign a numerically index keys. So what will happen? It will have 27, 31, 42, and then wizard, and then hobbit with keys as 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When we use sort function, in this case, in this block, it is going to print with keys 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, because we are not saying PHP to retain the keys for each value. Now, if we want to do that, we are using a sort function. If we want to sort it by keys, same thing, okay, same array we're using, we're just assigning it to another way, array, and then calling that function. So when we execute this, you will see this is the original array with key values, and then when we use a sort function, we have lost all the keys like Fred, AI, all this, and then we have values which are sorted, and then we have called we are saying PHP that okay, sort it but retain keys as well. So in this case it is retaining keys, but here with just sort function it has lost the keys. If you want to sort it by keys, then you can see here it has sorted by keys. When we sort it by key, it's going to retain the corresponding value. But when we sort it just by value, it's going to create a new numerical indexed keys. Okay. Now those were arrays. Now we have we are getting into functions. Like JavaScript and also in Perl, we can simply create it with function keyword. So yesterday we have seen that keywords and function names are not case sensitive, whereas variable names are case sensitive. So the syntax for creating or defining your functions are with function keyword and then your function name, whatever name you want to give, and then 0 or more parameters. So the parameters are optional, but not the parentheses. Parentheses are important. Function names are not case sensitive. A return statement causes the function to immediately terminate and return a value, if any, provided in the return. So you can write some conditions like you're creating a function and you want to return like I have an array with key and values as PHP and then students in that and then Perl and students in that and CGI and students in that or Ruby on Rails and students in those subjects. Then I want to see, okay, I have a function where I'm saying, calling this function and then saying, okay, get me all the students. And then I have two parameters. One is subject and one, let's say just subjects and another one as array. So when I invoke this function name with parameters, subject and then the actual array, in function I can write conditions like if subject is PHP, get the value from array and return it there itself. So it's gonna, when we have a return statement, function is gonna terminate there itself and then it will return the value that we have in the return. If we don't have any function, it's not gonna return any value. So sometimes we don't need a return. Okay, we want that to be, if you know Java, then we use void function, right? We use void keyword. We don't, if you don't want any return, if you're not expecting any return from that function. So a function that reaches the end of the body without executing a return returns no value. So sometimes, we don't need a return value. Like I want to add in the array a new subject and new students. I don't want a return from that function. I'll just call that function and then say, okay, this is the array and this is the subject and students. Just add in the array. I don't want any return. So in that case, we don't need any return. And return, a value is returned in PHP with a keyword called return. We'll see an example of that. When we look into the functions. So the next one is about the parameters. So in PHP, with PHP 5.3 or later versions, you can also use type hinting, like we do it in Java or C++. Like we can in parameter we can say what kind of variable that parameter is going to be. But in in PHP it still supports, we don't need to define any type of that variable. We can just define we can just call the variable. The parameters are nothing but simple variable name. So if you can have in PHP, it's not going to throw any error prior to 5.3 or prior to 5. If you have, let's say you are calling two parameters, but you are passing three parameters, it's going to just ignore that third parameter. Let's say you are expecting three parameters, but it is passing just two parameters. So there are ways that you can define your parameters in a function. When you are defining that function, you can say, okay, so I'm expecting three parameters, but it could also be possible that third parameter is optional. So I can just define it, okay, by default, parameter 3 equals to null. So that way, if functions are not passing, code that is invoking this function, not passing parameter 3, code will still, executes without breaking, without any errors. So if more actual parameters are supplied in a call, then there are formal parameters, the extra values are ignored. Vice versa, if more formal parameters are specified, then there are actual parameters in a call, then the extra formal parameters receives no value. And so passing a value, there are two ways, as we have in other languages. We can pass by value or pass by reference. So in PHP, by default, it passes a value. It uses pass by value for a variable. So putting an ampersand in front of a formal parameter specifies that pass by reference. Otherwise, if there's no ampersand, it's just pass by value. An ampersand can also be appended to the actual parameter, which must be a variable name. So this was prior to PHP latest version, but now it is going to throw an error if we specify an ampersand in the actual value. We'll see an example from that now, pass by value and pass by reference. just getting ready for that function. Okay, let me share my screen. I have defined a function. So we'll see an example of function as well. So function, and then it has parameters defined. And then I'm saying, okay, get, so if we specify ampersand here, this is passed by reference. If we don't specify, then it's going to be just passed by value. So I have two parameters here, $x, $y. $x can be passed by reference, and $y is just passed by value. So I'm assigning, so whatever value I'm receiving, I'm just updating it or modifying it, and then saying $x is always going to be 1, and then return just $x. Defining $x with value 2, and then calling that function text by passing $x, which is value 2, and then y 2, 3. So if you see here, when we have, parameters defined in a function just 2, but if we pass extra parameter here, if you see, I'm passing 3. So the third one is going to be PHP just ignores it. So I have a variable called x, and I have a value assigned 2. I'm calling this function, which is going to receive the $x as passed by reference. So when it gets a reference, it's going to use that $x as 2, but here it is changing it to 1, and then it returns 1. So when we print $x, even though the value assigned is 2, it's going to convert it to 1 and then print it. So let's execute and then see it. So if we pass it by value, let's say I'm passing it by value. So that whatever I'm changing it, it's going to be in the context of this function itself. It is not going to update actual variable. So if you see, I'm using the same function, just removing the reference, passed by reference here. I have $x defined with 2. So when I'm calling this test function, the value of x is also with 2, 2, 2, 3. So here it expects 2 and then 2, but it's going to update that x to 1 and then return 1. So when I when I print this $x, the value of $x is not going to be updated in the global context. It will still be 2. So we'll see when we execute it. You see, it has, when you pass by reference, it's going to update the actual variable value. Okay, so that a global variable, if you want to use, throughout your execution, then you can use global variables. You can also go for static if you, in the same function, when you define static, if you want to retain history. So declaring a variable in a function with the global declaration means that the function uses the global variable of that name. And then lifetime of a variable, the usual lifetime of a local variable is from the time the function begins to execute to the time, to the time when the function returns. Declaring a variable with static keyword means that the lifetime is from the first use of the variable to the end of the execution of the entire script. We'll see an example. This is just to retain some history. So we'll quickly see an example of that. So I have another function which I have created. Let me share my screen. Okay, so if you see here, I have a function called history. And then I'm saying $x is equal to 0 initially, and then printing that $x and incrementing it. So whenever I call that function till the execution of this script, so 3 times I've called. So first time it is 0 and then it increments. So it's going to 1. Next time it is going to be 1, and then next time it is going to be 3. 2, sorry. So let's execute it and then see. So if I call the same function, because it's a static keyword, I've used this as a static variable, it's going to retain the history. And then we have one more, what we have seen is a global. So we can use global variables as well. Here I'm saying, okay, $x is going to be 1. So if I don't use global keyword within the context of this function, so if you want to access global variables within a function, then you still have to call it with keyword global. Otherwise, this is going to be local variable for that function. So what I'm telling is, and then let's call this function, and then print $x. So if you see, I have a global variable, I'm saying value 1, and then I'm calling this function, and then $x, incrementing $x, and then printing it. So ideally, by default, it is 1. Now it should print 2. So when we execute this, if I don't use global keyword here in the function, then that is within the context of that function. So it's still going to print, let's say 3. It is still going to print the same value, 1. You see there. Can you guys hear me? So next, let's move on to the next slide. So we have seen the lifetime of a variable. Next is pattern matching. PHP provides both POSIX as well as Perl regular expression. And then there are a lot of functions that PHP supports. You know, we have like preg match, which is going to match a pattern, and then it returns the string. Preg split is one which we have. It's going to split that string into an array for the matching pattern. So we have a file, an example file called word table. I'll just go through that. We don't have much time, but let's just go through it. We'll just quickly look into that, and then we will see forms as well. So this is a file where I split a string pattern, matching with this, either, with all these special characters, split that string in, and then return, it's going to return this preg split is going to return the matching string as an array. So I'm passing in string, and then creating an array within that function. So the scope of this array is within this function. So all the matching string is going to get into the words, which is going to be an array. And then I'm looping it for all the words, for the matching words, and then counting it, how many times that word is. So if you see, and then returning that array. Okay, so if you see, I have a string like this: apples are good for you, or you don't like apples, or maybe you like oranges better than apples. And then I'm calling that function, which is going to count, which is going to split that string, and then count for each word how many times that word has been called. So we'll just execute it and then see. So if we see this, if you see the word frequency, so apples has been 3 times there, or is just 1. So it is just going to loop through all the words and then count it. So if you see the code, It's going to call that splitter function, split it. This is going to return this frequency array with all the words and the count in of those words in a table variable, and then I'm looping it through. And then for each, so here you see that sort function is there. It is going to sort by values. So for each word, what is the count? We are accessing it with square brackets. So word is a key in there, and then value is the count. So there are a lot of other expressions that we can use in PHP with regular expression. So you can browse through php.net documentation for more, and then for practice examples as well. Now moving on to next slide, form handling. So forms, see, yesterday I told you there are multiple variables. Those are reserved in PHP. Few of them are this $_post, $_get, $server, $_. So these are the variables called global variables. So post is used mostly when you post a request. Get is for when you submit a get request, like passing all the arguments in or query string in the URL itself. And then if you want to access server related variables, you can use $_server. Likewise, there are a lot of reserved global variables that you can browse through in php.net. We'll see an example. There is a file called popcorn3.html, and then corresponding PHP file, how it processes when you post that form. And then it uses a PrintF function to get the 2 decimal places print out for currency values. We'll see an example for that. So there is a HTML, just a form. So it's just going to be the same HTML form. You will have action, and then you will have a method defined. If you don't define a method, by default it will go for get, and then it will pass all your input elements in the URL as key values. So it's always better to go for post, so that you will have some control. Otherwise, all the values will be exposed. So this is just a simple form. It has nothing to do with PHP here. It is just a simple form which will be posted to. So if you see the action for the form is popcorn3.php. So we'll focus more on this popcorn3.php. So what it is doing here is it's going to receive all the submitted or posted values. So these are all element names that you have in HTML form. It's going to receive all the submitted elements, and then it processes it. So for the sake of this example, we have not checked for the, or validated it. But it's always, you can browse through, validations, how to do validations, how to check for whether this element has been posted or not. There is a function called isSet, is. So you can call this function to check whether this element has been submitted or not from the client side. Otherwise, PHP is going to throw in a warning when try to access this variable where it has not been defined. So just check this example. So this is the HTML form that we have. So it has buyer's name, street address. This is just a popcorn sale simple application. You can design robust applications in PHP, and mostly for e-commerce especially, PHP is most suitable. It has a lot of security in terms of transactions and all. So here we'll just pass some values and then see how it will be checked. So these are the products, and then this is the price, and then how much, what is the quantity for each product. Use enter buyer's name, and then street address, and then zip code along with state and city, and then what is the payment method. This is just a high level form, and without any validation and without any security. It's just for the sake of this example or for this class. So once we submit this, this is what the request is submitted to PHP. PHP is going to access all these variables. What is the buyer name, and then his address, all those. Okay, so this is how we can get the values we can read it from, submit it from HTML to PHP, and then we can process it and then display it in PHP. So form handling is important area that we should focus in any technology that or language that we will be learning. So that's for today. Tomorrow we will see more important along with cookies and session that PHP supports. If you have any queries, just feel free to post in the chat box. We will conclude it today here itself, and then we will see you on next Monday at 9 a.m. Thank you very much for your time.